Runners of the Wild. So I skipped a week for a good reason. I needed a little time to plan, and I'm going to talk about one of the things that we probably talk about the most in our clinic, which is breathing. You may say, well, I'm breathing right now. I'm not dead, so I've got to be breathing somewhat well. Well, this little article that I wrote, so I'm going to humble brag for a second, but mainly so you guys, if you have this trail runner, this is September 2014. Go read this article that I wrote in there, because it just kind of talks about a little more how to plug what we're going to talk about, breathing specific today, plug it into running. So just a good article there. So obviously it's got a little traction. But what is good breathing or optimal breathing versus bad breathing? Well, I wouldn't say bad breathing, because like I said, we're alive if we're breathing. But there's two kinds of respiration. The first one, which is called primary, would be through your diaphragm. And I know probably all of you have heard of this because it's become very hot button item here in the past like 2-3 years. But primary respiration, just big broad strokes explanation, is diaphragmatic respiration, so belly breathing. A lot of little nuances you get to. We're gonna just cover the basis here because we're trying to go with the kind of paradigm that if you make a little change in somebody who's not doing a whole lot, it makes a huge impact. So I'm going after those people that don't know anything about this. If you're already a breathing ninja, read the article. There's all sorts of performance breathing classes out there taught by a lot of really smart people. So the other kind of respiration is secondary respiration, which would also be called apical respiration, where we're going, so the chest is moving up and down versus this horizontal or lateral expansion through the abdomen, which kind of comes up through the rest of the rib cage as we expand out laterally. Secondary respiration is needed for activities like endurance activities and running, because you need more oxygen as you work harder and go further into your aerobic threshold. So you need to get more oxygen, fill up the upper and lower lobes of the lung, and get all of these secondary muscles of respiration. So all the muscles in between your ribs, your SCM, your scalenes, to help you. On a normal day when we're not going out for a super long run, we breathe on average about 20,000 times a day. You can probably add 10,000 to that if you're doing a run of about 10 miles. So if I'm doing a movement, which breathing is definitely a movement, around 20,000 to 25,000 times a day on average, I better hope that it's a pretty decent movement. I don't want to be breathing in this secondary fashion all day, making a bunch of tension through my neck, pulling my rib cage up, and then secondarily destabilizing my spine. So let's talk about that for a second. When I breathe like this all the time versus breathing down here, I basically have to hold myself up posturally with my big prime movers, which are my abs, my obliques, my lower back muscles, which a lot of people think are postural. They're not. They're just like a bicep. They're supposed to move you and then shut off. But when I don't breathe through my diaphragm or my belly, I have to revert to these big muscles that hold me up. So let's correlate that into running. If I immediately take off for my run and I'm already this chest dominant apical breather, that means I'm using these muscles to hold me up. Well, the further I run, the more fatigued they become. So what happens if I trip on a route and I got to do that kind of little stumble run and catch myself? I'm set up for a greater chance of low back injury, just because those muscles can't react, turn on, and then turn off like the prime movers they are. So there's a whole plethora of things where we're trying to work on when we work on breathing, from injury prevention to true core stability to actually improving O2 saturation through proper breathing mechanics and technique. So that's just, you could literally talk for hours on optimal versus suboptimal breathing. I just wanted to give you a general idea why I'm telling you about this stuff. So let's go right into a few drills. So first of all, you got to know how, because usually when I'm at a clinic, I'll have everybody, I'll just say, take a deep breath. And I would say 95% of people, unless they know about this or have been to my clinic, go, and it's this huge apical breath. So if I don't know how to belly breathe, a really good position for those of you that have kids is to mimic the position of like a 3 to 6 month old baby. So imagine me, don't imagine me in like a hot looking diaper, just like a regular diaper, so I don't want anybody to get like, turned on or anything. But if I'm in a diaper on my back, and I have my legs and arms in the air like this, imagine a baby. They don't have a six-pack, right? They've got this big Buddha belly because they don't have enough neuromuscular coordination or stability yet to support their frame. So they're completely solid here from a breathing standpoint, so they can start to do things like roll over for their toy and eventually come onto their side and then get up and crawl. So in this position, we put our feet up on like a couch or a chair or a stump if we're out in the woods, because we're all just bearded up trail runners, right? So we're here, makes it really easy to get your low back in a neutral posture, take the tension out of your lower extremities, and then I put one hand on my belly button, one hand on my sternum, and all I'm trying to do is keep this hand from moving up and get this hand to move up towards the ceiling in this fashion. Right? When we get a little bit better, we want to think that my stomach's not just moving up and down, it's moving 360 degrees. So we'll move the hands out and make sure we feel pressure back into our thumbs. So that's that full expansion. And I always like to think of this like if you kind of pulled the plunger, press the plunger on a syringe, you're going to build pressure. So for my nerds out there, Boyle's law, as volume decreases, pressure goes up. That's all we're doing. So the diaphragm goes down, pushes against the pelvic floor, and now my abdomen and my core and the rest of my body get to ride on that kind of cushion of air. And then the muscles around it just get to reflexively push back, and that's true stability at the low, or basically the most primal level. So the other side of that, which I said kind of using all these muscles to hold you up, is what we call a high threshold strategy. And that's not going to last, and it's also going to set you up for injuries. So once I've used this little drill to figure out how to breathe, now we want to work on kind of some specifics so we can take this drill and we can start to make it a core drill. So I'm sure you guys have seen, and it's actually in the article that I wrote for Trail Runner, that we can turn it into a dead bug. A few kind of nuances here. Make sure you got a neutral chin, back should be on the ground, knees above hip line, just so we're not having to really work on getting out of extension here. And we're just trying to hold this. So I can't tell you how many people I see that can't hold this for a minute, but then they flip around and they think they can hold a plank for 10 minutes, and it just doesn't make any sense. So as long as I can get here, and now I'm somewhat loaded by the weight of my lower extremity, and I can still breathe. So really easy drill. There's all sorts of variations out of this position, but this is a true, no pun intended, core position for working on breathing. The next one would be, how do I breathe to actually engage the muscles of respiration, primary respiration, from some of these positions. So I'm just going to kind of face the camera here and talk about this, but this is literally how they train snipers to breathe. So it's a 4-second inhale through your nose, and we won't talk about nasal breathing and why that's better than mouth breathers, but just realize you're really annoying if you're a really loud mouth breather. Nobody likes that, so breathe through your nose. And then it's an 8-second exhale through your mouth. So for a sniper, on that last second of the exhale, that's when they're going to squeeze the trigger and shoot, because they're basically trying to get their parasympathetic nervous system to override the sympathetic for a second so they have a really nice steady shot. So again, it's a 4-second inhale through your nose, 8-second exhale, and at the end of that exhale, you should be running out of oxygen and feeling like you're having to kind of use your abdominals to depress. So I always think of those old blowers for a fireplace that add some air in there to, kind of stoke the fire. But you want to inhale on that 4-second count and exhale on 8 seconds. Why 8 seconds? Most of us are what we call hyperinflator. So we're really good at breathing in oxygen. We're not so good at exhaling, which you may think it would be opposite. But what that does is it actually makes us hypercapnic, which means we have too much CO2 in the system. We need to breathe out CO2. Now, we're all runners. We really need to work on getting rid of CO2 when we start getting dogged. So it's just a kind of trail tip for you. I use this a lot when I'm kind of attacking a hill. Really focus on hard exhales to dump CO2, because what we know, without getting too nerdy on you, is that kind of whole Tim Noakes central governor theory, that perceived exhaustion through kind of your midbrain. A lot of that's based on the CO2 levels in your blood. So if we can help that a little bit, we may be able to fight fatigue. Another general tip, if you think about things like yoga, a lot of what their coaching is when you get into a position that feels uncomfortable or a big stretch, what's the coaching cue? It's breathe. So if you're doing any of the drills that I've talked about in the previous videos for any mobility, stability, things like that, or you're lifting some weights, you're doing a squat, a deadlift, make sure you're breathing. Anytime you hold your breath, we always say that's waving the red flag to your brain, and your brain is trying to pull you out of that position because it doesn't feel comfortable, and it's probably registering that position or movement or stretch as a threat. But that's why if we get into those positions that expose us to a graded or safe threat, and we learn how to breathe, we can take that threat, minimize it, and then learn how to progress. And that's how we progress our cross training and weightlifting and stretching and mobility work, okay? Last thing I want to talk about is Let's say I have had some trauma to the abdominal area, which could be anything from minor surgeries like appendectomies, gallbladder surgery for women's C-sections. Let's just say I am stiff as bricks through like my rib cage, my thoracic spine, my abdomen. We need to get in there, and sometimes, just like we'd foam roll a quad, we need to work on kind of the soft tissue structures of our, abdominals or obliques, also the diaphragm, but also just pushing on the organs slightly gives a big parasympathetic rush to the system, which is what breathing does. If you think about meditation, it's trying to basically calm the system down. So this is something that I try. I need to do it more, but I try to do a lot before I go to bed, because once you do a round of this, it takes about 2-3 minutes, you're just gonna feel like you're in La La Land and ready to go to bed. So all I'm doing, I'm gonna show you kind of standing up here, and then I'll get down on the floor and do one. This is a medicine ball that's filled with sand, so it kind of adapts to the shape of your body. You could use like a dollar ball you can get at Walmart. Same thing. This may be a little bit better, but you can use this as well. All we're doing is, I think of the old school G.I. Joe. He had his sweet six-pack, but he had those oblique lines, so you can see him tracing up here, and then you've got your rib cage that kind of makes an arch. We're gonna trace that arch with the ball as we do 3 breaths in each position. Now what we're doing is, as we inhale, we're trying to push the ball away from us with that abdominal expansion, so it's gonna look like this. That ball's gonna move. As you exhale, you're letting that ball push into you. Now it feels like a deep-seated pressure, like organ pain is just kind of deep pressure. If you have any crazy amounts of pain, obviously don't do this, but it doesn't feel great, but afterwards you feel better. It's just like any kind of foam rolling. Now if you're on the floor, this is what it actually looks like. So I kind of get in like a Spider-Man position. I start low and just kind of trace around that arch, but I'll get here and let myself just completely relax over that thing, and then you're gonna give 3 breaths, but you can literally see my body lift here. And then exhale. And we can add 2 drills into one here. We can apply that sniper tempo, that 4 inhale, 8 exhale to this. I do 3 breaths in each position, so it takes me like 3 minutes. And this is a wonderful way to calm down the system, but also work on really ingraining like proper breathing patterns. I say proper, let's just say optimal, okay? I love talking about this stuff. I really encourage you guys to comment more on these videos, because this is a group for runners that may be amateurs or experts, and this is important for both. So if we can foster a little bit of a conversation, we may pull some questions out that other people are thinking about or haven't thought about that they would also like to know. Let me know if you guys have ideas on any other videos, and we'll see you next week.